it is a little tedious at times, but I like to find a Zen mindset and put on a podcast or a show or some good music and kind of just zone out and get into the peacefulness of just tracing, basically. So we're going to start bring in any of the elements, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the original reference. And I'm actually not even going to bring it in. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to open it up. So we'll start with this foreground rocky area. And so I'm going to bring in that original reference. This is it's really important that you keep all your references in a folder so that you have them and you can bring them back in, or refer back to them or reuse them if you need to. Now, rather than bringing this back into the painting and masking it out there, I'm actually going to mask it here where I have the full resolution of the image. I'm going to hit Control J and duplicate this layer, and I'll hide this. And I'll create a new layer, and with G or Shift G to toggle what tool you're using, either paint bucket or a gradient tool. And I'm going to just fill this with black and then 20% gray, maybe a little lighter, just something to give me some contrast, and merge that in with the background. So now I have this image, and I'm going to create a layer mask. And then I'm using the standard default Photoshop brush, and I'm going to make it 100% hardness, make sure it's at 100% opacity, and then just zoom in and start painting that edge. And remember, with layer masks, if I paint black, it takes it away. And if I paint white, it brings it back in. So you can kind of push and pull your edges. Again, this is when you just get into the Zen zone. Just find your happy place and just get into the mindset of just tracing, because if you fight it or rush it, it's just going to hurt your painting. So it's really important to just take the time and do this right, especially if you want to do feature level matte paintings. Really what that means, I don't really believe that feature level matte paintings is a different kind of matte painting. The only real difference is a lot of film studios hold their standards a lot higher, and you can't really get away with shortcuts. But I try to not use shortcuts with whatever I'm doing. If I'm going to do a painting, I'm just going to take the time and try to do it right from beginning to end. And if the time and schedule doesn't allow for that, then I'm going to try and do a simpler painting so that I can do it right at least. And for now, we're just going for the edge of the whole rock formation. But it's important to zoom out and understand where you are in it. It's easy to kind of get lost in like a little detail, and you have no clue where that actually fits in. And there are times where maybe you don't want to include the whole thing. Like here, I kind of like the idea of having the silhouette of these rocks kind of jut out and not be so smooth. And this is kind of where you can make those decisions and really define the silhouettes of your different elements. Something like that. And I'll take away over here as well, just to break up that silhouette and make it a little more interesting. And don't worry, I'm not going to bore you with just watching me mask out every single element in this painting. I'm just going to take you through this one, just so you understand the process. This is a great time to watch classes. This is, I kind of do look forward to masking things out every once in a while, because it gives me a good chance to catch up on lectures or classes. And this is actually, I was masking things out for projects, watching Learn Squared classes. Because this doesn't really require too much brain work, you know? You don't really have to think about this. So it's great to stimulate your mind in different ways, and with classes or great talks or shows or however you want. See here, I got so zoomed in, I wasn't even looking at the fact that this is the background mountain, and I don't want the background mountain. I'm just going to use this as a midground element. So this is another, it requires, I guess, a little brain work. And things like this can get a little intimidating because, you know, when you're zoomed in, you can't really see what's going on, but that's really just up to you to kind of find the silhouette in there that you want to create. And what I'm looking for here is just natural transition points. You know, you could place another element behind these rocks, and you have a hard edge in this element, in this place, that'll be a nice transition from one element to another and make it a little more seamless. I feel like that's a pretty good place. I'll just kind of like squiggle it off from there because I'm going to cover that stuff up anyways. So now that I'm using a small brush and just getting the outline to make sure that like my actual outline is precise. But once we get to this point, I can hold Alt and click on this mask, and that just reveals what the actual mask looks like. And then I'm going to go to the magic wand. I'm going to click up here. And you can see that it's the marching ants have kind of selected this area. Sometimes if you don't complete your mask, you'll see this where it's on both sides, and that just means you got to look for where the connection point is, or where your mask wasn't fully cutting off what you want. So now magic wand tool, and I'm going to go to select, modify, expand, and expand by 3 pixels. And that's expanding my selection. So now it's beyond this side. And I can just hit delete and fill that whole area in with black. And Control D to deselect. And Alt click my mask again. And now I have this element masked out. This is the stage 2. If there was anything that I wanted to fix in this element, if we had, you know, people in here, I would paint it out over here before bringing it back into the painting. But luckily this element is really clean and really nice as it is, so we're just going to use it straight out the gate. Now the next thing I'm going to do before bringing it into this painting is I'm going to convert this to a smart object. And you do that by just right-clicking here, convert to smart object. And now you can see the mask went away. But really, if you double click here, it'll open up the original element, and you can see the mask is still here. And we can still go and we can still bring things back or take things out. And I can just close that out. Do you want to save? I'm going to hit no for now because I didn't do anything. But if you do make a change, hit yes, and it'll just update your smart object. And now I'll drag this in. And I'm going to just close this out. I don't need to save it. Sometimes it's a good idea to save what you've masked out if you're going to be reusing elements, or if you want to like build up a library of elements. I try not to reuse elements, so that's why I don't really save what I've masked. So now that we have a smart object, we're going to go into smart objects a lot throughout this course, but the reason I'm going to use one now is because if I hit Control T, and let's say we shrink it all the way down, and let's just distort it. And if I hit enter, If this wasn't a smart object, this would be locked in and baked. But because this is, if I hit Control T and bring up free transform again, you can see it still keeps what we did to it, so we can bring it back. And we're not losing any information, and we're not losing any resolution. It's keeping the original, all the information inside of that smart object. And if at any point we just distorted it too far and we couldn't get it back, you could just double click here and you have your original element ready to go. And you can always just convert that into another smart object and drag it in. And close this out, don't save it. And now you have another smart object without that warp and distortion in it. So we're going to bring that in and we're just going to line it up to where we had it. And we don't need to line it up. We can work further with placing it and making sure that it looks nice and follows our golden ratio and all of that. But for now, I'm not going to worry about that. I like to just get through all of the masking first. Prep all of the elements. And it's like when you're cooking a meal and you put out all your ingredients first, you lay them all out on your table, and then you cut everything up, and then you put it all together, just doing each stage. And especially when you're in the mindset of masking things out, just staying in that mindset and just getting through all of your elements. And that way, when you go into the next phase, you have everything laid out, ready to go, and you don't need to think about that anymore. It's already done. Speaking of next phase, next we're going to color correct all of these elements. But until then, I'm going to go and mask all this stuff out, get this all prepped, and I'll see you in the next lesson.